Here is the overview I want you to pay attention to. So basically, this is how Form 941 looks like. So you got to put your EIN. So this is your employer identification number. You put your name. Here we're speaking about your personal name, not your trade name. You put your, if there's any trade name you want to associate with this Form 941, you put it here. And you put your address, you put your city, you put your zip, your state and zip, okay? And here you have to actually, if you look at on the right on the screen, it says the quarter to which you want the Form 941 to be associated. So in this case, we chose the fourth quarter, okay? And you can choose as many of quarters as you want for this particular exercise. We chose the fourth quarter. You can, in your case, it could be first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, or fourth quarter, it really depends. So part one, you basically have to put the number of employees who received wages, tips, or other compensations. And other compensation, we're paying. We're talking about the quarter here. So we put 75 in our case, and you have to put the wages, how much you actually paid in total. Again, Form 941 is for every quarter. It's per quarter. Form 940 is for the whole year. Okay, and so here we are speaking about. So we put 1 million just for sake of calculations, and you put the footer tax that were the federal income tax withheld from wages. So we put 20%, so 200,000. So you have to specify that so that you actually can follow through with the calculation. And so now, if there are no wages, tips, or other compensations that actually you paid, that actually were subject to a FICA tax. So you basically you check here and you go to line 8. In our case, this was not applicable, so we didn't actually check that. And here, basically, you have to just follow some kind of calculations. So you specify the wages that are applicable to Social Security. So in our case, it was 1 million. You follow the math here, you multiply, and then you get the amount. Do the same thing for 58I, 58II, and 5B, and 5C, and 5D. So this is how the calculation looks like. We're going to leave this on the screen so you have a clear idea how the calculation is made. And so it's all about just multiplying the wages times a certain percentage that the IRS has already set. So pretty straightforward. By the way, boss, welcome back to the show. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Make yourself comfortable. You are going to enjoy today's conversation. So basically here, if you look the line 5E, basically you're adding everything. So if you look at all the amounts that we had before, you actually add it, and in our case we get 190,650, and so basically you go to line 6 here, you put the same amount because there are no sort of no other adjustments before we move on to another amount. So line 7 we didn't have anything. Line 8, line 9, no special situations. Listen, everything I'm telling you here, in our case, it didn't happen. But if you have any question, please let us know in the comment section, and one of our team members will get back to you and answer you. Not a problem. So here, line 10, total taxes after adjustments. We basically have the same amount, $190,650. Okay, so here line 11 is not applicable. Line 11A, 11B not applicable, and we move on. So part 1 here, next thing on the screen here. So part 1, if you look here, line 12 we had the same amount. So total taxes after adjustments and non-refundable credits. If you had a refundable credits, this will actually lower your taxes that they have to pay. And so here, line 13A, you have to specify the deposits that you actually made to the IRS. So, but this is actually this relates to this quarter. Remember, Form 941 is for 1 quarter. Form 940 is for the whole year. So 941 is for 1 quarter. So for this quarter, we paid 175,000. And basically here, so you go to a line 13G, right? So basically you put the same amount, and so the balance due, the balance due in our case is 15,650. So basically we owe the IRS, right? Because we owed the total amount we owed was 190,000, about 190,000, a little more, and we paid 175,000. So in this case, the balance due, if you do the calculation correctly, is $15,650. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about Form 941. How do you actually file it? Part two here, basically, you have to tell the IRS more about your deposit schedule and tax liability for this quarter. Again, we are speaking about this quarter. Remember that earlier I was telling you that we actually owed the IRS $15,000, right? Now let's break it down here. If you see here, you have to specify if you are a monthly scheduled depositor for the entire quarter, and in our case, this was applicable. So we actually broke down month one, month two, and month three. So as we're talking about fourth quarter, this will be October, November, and December. So this is the tax liability per month. So in our case, it was a 65,000 first month, 65,000 second month, and 60,650 for the third month, for a total amount of $190,650. And you have to specify whether or not you are a semi-weekly scheduled depositor for any part of the quarter. So you have to see what really is applicable to you. And one thing I want to say here is that when we talk about monthly scheduled depositor versus semi-weekly scheduled depositor, the instructions from the IRS are pretty clear. It really depends on the magnitude of the salaries that you actually pay every quarter. Because if the amount is really substantial, then the IRS wants you to switch from being a monthly scheduled depositor to a semi-weekly scheduled depositor. Remember, the U.S. tax system is on as-you-go basis, so the IRS want to have its fair share of taxes that you actually you owe the agency. And now I'm showing you on the next screen here. You have the payment voucher. Remember, in our case, we owed the IRS $15,650. So basically, this is the payment voucher. So when you file Form 941. You have to actually attach the form. You have to file, in addition, Form 941V. This is the voucher. So here you put your business name. You put your personal name. If you're a sole proprietor, you have to put your name, your address, your city, and zip. And then you have to also attach the check or whatever form you're actually using to make the payments. And make sure if you look at the dollar amount, make sure that amount corresponds exactly to how much was the balance due. And you have to specify also your EIN, very important, because this is how the IRS tracks your tax liability, among other things. And you have to specify also whether the payment was for the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, or fourth quarter. In our case, everything related to fourth quarter. Let me give you basically our overview here when it comes to Form 941. It's really important to understand that Form 941 is an employer's quarterly federal tax return. It is also an IRS tax form provided to employers in the U.S. and a summary of the total taxes withheld for the previous quarter by a business or an individual. It's one of those things where you have to understand. You have to who has to file it really. I mean, the IRS has pretty strict rules when it comes to who has to file Form 941, and so you should report the following amounts on Form 941: wages you have paid, tips your employees reported to you, federal income tax withheld, both the employer and the employee share of Social Security and Medicare taxes, additional Medicare taxes withheld from employees, and the current quarter's adjustments for Social Security and Medicare taxes for fractions of cents, sick pay, tips, and group term life insurance, qualified small business payroll tax credit for increasing research activities. So if you're a startup or you are an established business and those credits actually apply to you, please take them. And also credits for qualified sick and family leave wages paid in 2023 after March 31st, 2020 and before October 1st, 2021. This was during COVID, okay? So you really have to remember that. Now, the parameters that should not be reported are pensions, annuities, and gambling winnings. And if those are applicable to you, you want to use Form 945 instead, okay? And this is actually the annual return of withheld federal income tax. And to report unemployment taxes, use Form 940. Okay, we actually finished a review of that form also. So after filing your first Form 941, you got to really actually file a return for each quarter. This is one of those things where I was just telling you, these taxes are tracked quarter by quarter. And so even if there are no taxes to report, you still have to actually file a Form 941. So the IRS has a clear idea about what's happening in your business when it comes to payroll taxes. Okay, and however, There are a few exceptions where you don't have to actually file Form 941. Let's say if you received a notification to file Form 944, okay, if you're a seasonal employer, if you're an employer of household employees or employers of farm employees also. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about the Form 941. Let's quickly dig a little deeper here. When we talk about how do you actually fill it out, it's one of those things where you have to really pay attention to certain things. Now, part one is pretty straightforward. As you saw earlier, it's basically a section that really allows the IRS to gather information about your company. And part two is actually for your deposit schedule and the tax liability for this quarter. Again, everything revolves around your tax liability for this quarter. Part three is about your business. So it's one of those things where if a question does not apply to your business, just leave it blank or just put any. And part four is about your third-party designing. So it's one of those things where if for any reason you had, let's say, a paid preparer or somebody else actually filing the form for you, and you want the IRS to direct all questions to that person, you want to specify that. So this third-party designing actually asks permissions to speak with the third-party designing, and this person is someone who has been hired to prepare actually the form for you or to prepare the payroll taxes. It can be a CPA, a certified public accountant. It can be an EA. It can be an enrolled agent, or it could be a tax attorney, or it can be just a regular tax, like a paid tax preparer. And the one thing I want to say here is that if you do not to discuss with another person, third-party designing, you have an option of not doing that. So it's one of those things. Before, please do not forget to actually complete all 3 pages of Form 941 and sign it. You have to sign it. And this actually steps include the signature of the employer, the date, the time, and the phone number. Okay, and this is also the point at which you should check the form for any errors to avoid actually a penalty. And it's one of those things where remember that you are filing Form 941 4 times a year, so you got to do it quarterly, even if you don't have any payroll taxes to report. And so the due dates are as follows. So April 30th, July 31st, October 31st, and January 31st. And if you report less than $50,000, then you are supposed to make monthly deposits. If you report more, you must make deposit twice a week. Let's talk about where you should file the Form 941. It's one of those things where there are 2 ways to file that form, okay? You can actually file it online, pretty straightforward. That's what a lot of small businesses do nowadays. You can file it online or through mail, okay? Now, when we talk about mail here, the Form 941 actually, you have to make sure that you follow the proper address. The address will always be applicable to the specific states where your business is located, and so the IRS will give you that form, that address rather. If you have any question on that, please let us know, and we'll let you know the address for your specific state. So when you actually reach out to us, you want to mention the city and state where you're actually where you're operating from. But online, that's actually a lot easier here. You just have to go on the IRS website. There is actually a section. That section changes all the time, but it's called a federal e-file, and so the government allows making the payment online through the electronic federal tax payment system, the EFTPS. And but you have to really enroll to be able to do so. Make sure that your business is enrolled so that you can actually avail yourself of this specific let's say application, okay? And so one thing I want to say here is that it's important. I want to go back to the fact that you have to really abide by the due dates. Otherwise, you are exposing your firm to pretty stiff penalties, okay? So when we talk about what the due dates really are, so for the first quarter, in other words, if the quarter ends March 31st, the form is actually Form 941 is due April 30th. If your quarter ends June 30th, you have to file Form 941 July 31st. If the quarter ends September 30th, the Form 941 is due October 31st. And for December 31st, it's January 31st. So you can see that there's always a running 30 days after the quarter ends to actually file Form 941. So here chose like a normal calendar. Let's say an annual calendar. But if you had a fiscal year that has a little bit of difference, then you have to apply your due dates. It always is 30 days after the end of your fiscal quarter. Okay, and so yeah. Now, the due dates are important because there are penalties for failure to file. So, failure to file, or let's say late filing. So, Form 941 for tax returns, you have to file it 4 times a year, right? And so the penalties are as follows: deposits that are made 1 to 5 days. There's a late charge. I mean, if you actually make it 1 to 5 days late, the penalties actually are 2%. Deposit that are made 6 to 15 days late, charge 5%. Deposit there are made at 16 days or later, but 10 days before the first notice from the IRS, charge at 10%. You can see that the penalties are pretty stiff. Okay, deposit that are paid directly to the IRS, to the RRT, or along with the tax return charge, they actually charge 10%. And basically, amounts that remain unpaid even after the first notice or from the day you receive the notice demanding immediate payments, whichever is earlier, charge 15%. So you can see that there's a gradual sort of a gradual rate increase, the gradual rate, let's say, a strategy here. And when we talk about Form 941, it's really important to really balance things throughout the year. It's all about, it really goes deeper when we talk about your tax strategy. Really, it's all about looking at your cash flows, your revenue, and really understand how you have to abide by your federal tax liabilities. So balancing out the year is crucial and cannot be really neglected. So it's one of those things where you have to understand that you got to really pay attention to your W-2 forms. You got to pay attention to your Form 940. You got to pay attention to your Form 941. And during COVID, there was actually some special situations. And now that COVID is over, you really have to abide. And one thing I want to say is that COVID is over. It's been 2 or 3 years and COVID is over, but there are still businesses that are reeling from the effect of COVID. So if you are in that situation, you want to let us know in the comment section, and we'll let you know which relief steps to really seek, because there are some steps you need to seek at the business level so that you can actually like let's say if you can't really deposit your Form 941 with the scheduled payments amount, then you have to really contact the IRS. But let us know in the comment section, and we'll certainly let you know how you have to do it depending on the states and depending upon your company's specific situations, because situations are totally different. And there are cases where you might have, like, if you don't have COVID, but let's say you have a federal disaster, like a disaster that has been designated by the federal government, as let's say FEMA has designated a hurricane or any other event as a disaster, then you have some kind of relief that you can seek not only at the federal level but also at the state level. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. And let's do a quick recap here. So in today's conversation, I spoke to you about Form 941. So I gave you the overview, and then finally I gave you some kind of general information and our approach when it comes to filing that form. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll speak to you another time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.